Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into the epic drama, the fierce public backlash, and the downright gritty, almost unbelievable history behind Paris's absolute most iconic landmark, the Eiffel Tower.
It's a crazy question, right? How exactly did the world's most hated building become its most beloved? Because, this really isn't just a simple story about architecture. As we go through this explainer together, we're going to uncover a tale of extreme engineering, some incredibly fierce artistic protests, a massive workers' strike, and even a secret financial bailout that literally saved the entire project from total collapse. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, The Impossible Dream, a 300-meter ambition.
So our story kicks off in the 1880s. France was gearing up to host the 1889 World's Fair, and they desperately needed a centerpiece. Something big, something bold to really show off French scientific and industrial prowess. The ambitious and honestly kind of crazy goal was to build a structure exactly 300 meters high. Now, to put that into perspective, just look at the existing marvels of that time. The Great Pyramid of Cheops, that was only 150 meters. The newly built Washington Monument, which was actually the tallest building in the world right then, was a solid masonry structure standing at just 169 meters. And then you have Gustave Eiffel, a brilliant bridge engineer proposing an iron structure nearly double that height. To the folks back in the 19th century, this sounded like absolute science fiction.
But Eiffel wasn't the only guy competing to build the fair's centerpiece, and the contrast in the rival visions was just night and day. On one hand, you've got Jules Bourdais' Sun Column, which was this massive, traditional, heavy stone tower. On the other, Eiffel's Iron Tower. This was initially designed by two of his engineers and then refined by the architect Stephen Souvestre. Now back then, iron was seen as cheap. It was a material for factories and train stations, definitely not majestic monuments. But Eiffel, he was incredibly clever. He actually met with Edouard Lecroy, the government minister running the fair, who was already super stressed out about the dangerously heavy stone foundations of Bourdais' design. Following that little meeting, Lecroy essentially rigged the rules. He published competition specs requiring an iron tower exactly 300 meters tall with a 125-meter square base right on the Champ de Mars. Wow, what a coincidence! Those just happen to be Eiffel's exact dimensions.
Section 2. An engineering miracle. Precision and logistics.
So, with the contract securely in hand, Eiffel had just over 2 years to pull off the impossible. And the secret to how he actually did it? It all comes down to the number 18,000. You see, Eiffel didn't really build the tower from scratch on the Champ de Mars. Instead, in his off-site workshop a few kilometers away, a team of 40 draftsmen designed 18,000 individual modular iron parts. It was basically a giant puzzle. Every single piece was pre-drilled to the exact millimeter before it ever even arrived at the construction site.
And to hold those 18,000 interlocking pieces together, well, it took an absolutely incredible amount of hardware. We're talking 2.5 million rivets.
And installing those rivets? Oh, it was a grueling, frankly terrifying process. It required a 4-man team for every single connection, working hundreds of feet in the sky, sometimes braving freezing winter winds. Here's how it went. One worker heated the rivet until it was searing hot. A second guy positioned it into the hole with tongs. 2 others hammered the ends flat, and as it cooled, the iron contracted, pulling those massive metal plates incredibly tightly together.
But the absolute most nerve-wracking moment of the whole project came in December 1887. The 4 massive 70-ton legs of the tower had to meet perfectly at the first platform. If they were off by even a fraction of a millimeter, the tower wouldn't align and could potentially collapse. To pull this off, Eiffel used a genius combination of modern hydraulic jacks and, believe it or not, an ancient technology: wooden boxes filled with sand. By slowly letting the sand drain out of the boxes, he could lower and tilt the massive iron pylons with absolute pinpoint precision. And you know what? It worked flawlessly.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is the reaction. Section 3. Protests and secret funding. Fierce artistic backlash.
So while Eiffel was pulling off these absolute miracles of engineering, the rest of Paris was, well, completely furious with him. Just listen to this dramatic quote. "For 20 years, we shall see the shadow of this odious column of bolted metal stretch over the city like a black blot of ink." That was from a petition published in the newspaper Le Temps, and it was signed by some of the absolute most famous writers, painters, and architects in all of France. They completely despised this modern factory chimney that had the audacity to rival historical masterpieces like Notre Dame. Eiffel fired back, of course, arguing that true strength and structural integrity are inherently beautiful, but the cultural elite, yeah, they just weren't having it. And honestly, the artistic protests weren't even his biggest problem. As the tower grew, so did the financial burden. The state had originally capped its contribution at 1.5 million francs, but the final cost was ballooning to roughly 7 million. A massive chunk of that was for the really complex, never-before-seen elevators required to travel up the curved legs of the tower. Eiffel was staring down potential bankruptcy. So, the big question, how do you find 7 million francs literally overnight?
Well, the answer was a pretty controversial, totally secret bailout involving the Panama Canal. Ferdinand de Lesseps, the famous French diplomat who was trying to build the canal, was facing an absolute disaster over in Central America. He desperately needed massive metal locks to get boats over the mountains, and he needed them yesterday. So he turned to the King of Iron, Gustave Eiffel. Eiffel agreed to build the locks, but he demanded an exorbitant sum of money paid up front. He received a staggering 70 million franc advance. And that massive influx of cash, that is what completely funded the rest of the Eiffel Tower, ultimately saving the whole project.
Section 4. The Iron Lady triumphs, shocking the entire world.
With the funding securely in his pocket, construction moved at an astonishing pace. They broke ground in January 1887. And despite legal threats from local residents who were terrified this massive iron thing would fall right on their houses, the legs were perfectly joined by December 1887. In September 1888, Eiffel even managed to push through a fierce worker strike over dangerous conditions. He did it by refusing to increase daily wages, but instead offering a big completion bonus. And then, against literally all odds, in March 1889, just 2 years, 2 months, and 5 days after starting, the tower was officially inaugurated.
So the crucial point here is just how wildly successful this debut actually was. At the 1889 World's Fair, it officially became the tallest building in the world, standing at roughly 1,000 feet. Also, fun fact, it was originally painted completely red to protect the iron. Pretty crazy to imagine, right? Nearly 2 million people visited in just 6 months. The ticket sales repaid Eiffel's entire personal investment almost instantly. But more importantly, it totally repaired French national pride, proving their industrial dominance to the entire globe.
All right. Section 5. Saved by the radio. A shocking twist. Now you might think the story ends there, but Eiffel's triumph was actually pretty short-lived, because the Eiffel Tower was never, ever meant to be permanent. The initial agreement explicitly stated that the tower would be demolished and sold for scrap iron in 1909, exactly 20 years after the fair. And to make matters way worse, in 1892, that Panama Canal project went entirely bankrupt, ruining thousands of small French investors. Eiffel was caught up in the massive corruption scandal and even convicted of abuse of confidence. Now, although his conviction was later overturned on a technicality, his reputation was in absolute ruins, and attendance at his temporary tower plummeted. The city was fully prepping to tear the monster down. But Eiffel was a fighter. He knew that to save his masterpiece, he had to prove it was way more than just a tourist attraction. It had to become an indispensable tool for science and for the state. And his survival strategy was just brilliant. He added a weather station at the very top, he conducted cutting-edge wind and gravity experiments, and perhaps most importantly, he partnered with a French army officer named Captain Gustave Ferrier. Ferrier was experimenting with a brand new, totally unproven technology, wireless telegraphy, which we know better today as radio.
And this brilliantly illustrates how adaptability is what really saves the day. This military application is exactly what spared the tower from its death sentence. Eiffel actually paid for the radio experiments out of his own pocket, letting the military use his 300-meter creation as a gigantic antenna. And the results? Astounding. They communicated with the country's borders, then all the way to North Africa, and eventually even Washington. By the time that 1909 demolition date rolled around, the Army declared the tower utterly indispensable. During World War I, it was even used to intercept crucial enemy messages. So pure adaptability, not just its beauty, is what truly saved the Iron Lady from the scrapyard. From a ridiculed blot of ink to the undeniable heartbeat of Paris, the story of the Eiffel Tower shows us that visionary ideas almost always face fierce resistance. Gustave Eiffel dared to build the impossible. He adapted when failure loomed, and he left us a monument to human ambition that has literally stood the test of time. So I'm going to leave you with this question to ponder. What impossible legacy will you build? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning.